Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Respectable Dr. Abdul Aziz Wahab MAG, respectable Mr. Zainuddin MPD. So, thank you for the opportunity given, and this time I will present my thesis proposal entitled The Influence of the Discussion Learning Method on the Development of Speaking Skill at 3rd Grade Senior High School Uswatun Hasanah. So, before of that, I will introduce myself first. My name is Octavia Margareta, and I'm from English department. So for the first slide, that is capture one. Capture one divided into 5 subcapture. Number 1 is background of the study, limitation of the study, statement of the problem, objective of the study, and significance of the study. I will begin with background of the study. So here, my background of the study, that is, speaking is one of the most important aspects in measuring English proficiency. However, many students still find it difficult to master speaking. And then discussion method is a learning method that is tested by researchers in this study. How influential the method is in speaking only by senior high school Uswatun Hasanah students. So, in my research, I choose a discussion method because from the data obtained by short interview with subject teacher and then the short observation, it can say that their speaking skill is still low or lacking for the level class classified as a high level class in education. So based on this problem, the researcher, it's me, interest to doing a researching about how the influential the discussion method for their speaking ability. The next slide, that is limitation of the study. Here I have 4 limitation of the study. Number 1 is limited to the influence, just for the influence of the discussion method on senior high school Uswatun Hasanah. And then number 2 is the sample used in this study was 3rd grade student consisting of 30 students. And then number 3, short-term study conducted on the date to 3 November until 10 November 2023. And then the last is research will only focus on the result of pre-test and then post-test. The next slide is statement of the problem. Here I formulate the statement of the problem into 2. First is whether the discussion learning method influenced in speaking skill for 3rd grade student of senior high school Uswatun Hasanah. And then number 2 is how much the influence of discussion learning method in speaking ability in 3rd grade student of senior high school Uswatun Hasanah. The next slide is objective the study. From the problem that I take in the previous slide, so I have 2 objectives of the study. Number 1 is to know the influence of discussion learning method in speaking skill of 3rd grade student of senior high school Uswatun Hasanah. And the number 2, that is to know how much the influence of the discussion learning method in speaking skill of 3rd grade student of senior high school Uswatun Hasanah. The next slide and the last slide of capture 1, that is significance of the study. By conducting this research, I hope that this research can be useful for the following parties. That is number 1 for teacher. I hope this research can make teachers more creative in choosing to learn strategies according to the needs of students at the senior high school Uswatun Hasanah. And then for student, I hope this research can make students more motivated and have a high interest in improving their speaking skill so that their future can be better. And number 3 for the readers. I hope this research can provide interest to readers to research and observe learning strategies for different perspectives. And then number 4 for researcher. I hope this research can increase the researcher knowledge about learning method and how to apply discussion method. Okay, the next slide is capture 2. Capture 2 divided into 4 capture, that is review of related literature, previous study, theoretical framework, and hypothesis of the study. Because in my research I will explain, I will take about discussion method and then speaking. So here I have a grand theory for discussion method and then speaking. First for discussion method, I take from Hasama A, state that this discussion method is clearer and more comprehensive understanding of the problem or topic being discussed. And then for the purpose of the discussion method, I take from Rustia in her book that state that this purpose of the discussion method, that is for encourage students to think critically and independently, be brave in expressing opinion, to be able to take alternative answer to a problem with careful consideration. And number 2 is about speaking. The meaning of speaking, I take grand theory from the Richard J.C. and Smith. They said that speaking refers to the act of expressing thought, ideas, and information through verbal communication. And for the purpose of the speaking, I take from Ferrano Tacoronte and their friends. So they said that the purpose of speaking is to communicate consideration, ideas, and information effectively through verbal means. Okay, the next slide is previous study. So here I take 3 previous study that I think that's most relevant with my title. So the previous study 1, I take from the Janice Van Tessen Wester on 2021. The title is Student Possibilities to Learn from Group Discussion Integrate in World-Class Teaching and Mathematics. The result of this research, that is, the majority of students experienced change and were able to understand the material better. And then for the previous study 2, I take from Rico Herbert Sigalingging, Sandy Dahareva, Dorlan Naibahu on 2023. The title of this research is Role of the Discussion Method in Increasing Student Learning Motivation in Christian Education Subject. And the result of this research, that is, that the discussion method has a significant role in increasing student learning motivation by encouraging active participation, exchange of ideas, and a deeper understanding of the material. For the number 3, from the Hosanna Husaini Wakai, Omar Hassan, Ali Mahfud on 2023. The title of this research is The Discussion Method of Teaching and Nigerian Secondary School Student Performance in English Test of Oral. The result of this research, that is, the discussion method of teaching was effective in improving the student performance in the test of orals. From this previous study, it can say by the discussion method has been researched before. But what the difference between my research with the previous study? That is, first, of course, the place of research, of course. And also in my research, I choose and I using this discussion method for their speaking skill. I want to see the influence discussion method to their speaking ability, and I want to see whether the discussion method is effective learning method or not, like that. Okay, the next slide, that is the theoretical framework. Here, my theoretical framework. In English learning, there is 4 skills, namely speaking, reading, listening, and writing. So in my research, I take a speaking ability or speaking skill. So in my research, I will doing observation. In this observation, I will do 2 things. First, I will test their speaking ability before applying discussion method with pre-test. It can say pre-test. After I am doing a pre-test with the student about their speaking ability, I take the data from that. After that, I will give them treatment. That is discussion method. After I give them treatment, I will doing a test, that is post test. Post test is for test their speaking ability after applying discussion method. After I get the two data, that is pre-test and post-test, I will analyze the data, and after that I take a result, that is whether the discussion method is effective or not, or ineffective. The discussion method give influence or not, like that. So the next slide is hypothesis of the study. Here, HA is accepted if the value of T count bigger than T table, and vice versa. H0 is rejected if T count smaller than T table value. In other words, the hypothesis is accepted if the calculated T value is greater than the same with T table at a significant level of 0,05%. So the simple word, it can be said like this. HA here means that there is a significant from discussion method, significant influence from discussion method for their speaking ability. But if H0 there is no significant influence from discussion method for their speaking ability, like that. And then for the next slide, that is capture 3. Here, capture 3 divided into 4 subcapture, that is research method, population and sample, research instrument, and data collection. So I will begin with research method. Here, research method, the research method is a quantitative research method with a pre-experimental research design. So why I choose a quantitative? Because here I want to see an influence of the discussion method. So I think it's better if I choose a quantitative, because it can be calculated by the formula effect size. I will know how the size the influence of discussion method for this speaking ability. The next is quantitative research. I get a grand theory from John Creswell in his book, and as generally understood in the field of research, refers a systematic empirical investigation that use mathematical, statistical, and computational techniques to gather and analyze data. For the experiment, because this research using pre-experimental research design, so I will take from the John Creswell too. In his book, refers to that the experimental design is a systematically manipulate one or more variables in order to evaluate how this manipulation impact an outcome of interest. And then the last is, in this research, use one group pre-test and post-test control design. So for my research, the student in one class, that is in the 3rd grade, I do want to divide them to the two group, that is control and experiment group. But I will doing that this one class, all of the student in this class, I will make them to the experiment group, so that all of them can be sample in my research. For the next slide is population and sample. So in this study, researcher conducted research at Senior High School Uswatun Hasanah in the 2023 until 2024 school year with a total 150 students. The population that I get, that is uh, the student of the senior high school Swatun Hasana in the 2023 and 2024. Total with them is 150 students. And for the sample, the researcher chose the third grade senior high school consisting of 30 students as the research sample. And the reason why I choose this class, because the discussion method need experience of speaking. So if I choose the class that the lower level than them, like second grade or maybe first grade, like that, or it can junior high school. Why I'm not choose them? Because in this method that I use in my research discussion method, I think there have to there have there have there must have experience of speaking. So I think if I choose the third grade senior high school, so they have experience about speaking, so it can work better in the third grade senior high school, I think. So the next slide is research instrument and data collection. Research instrument that used in this research is oral test because I take speaking ability or speaking skills, so I need an oral test for take a data, pre-test, and post-test. The test will be carried out 2 times, namely during the pre-test and then post-test. For the data collection techniques used in this research include, number 1 is observation, and number 2 is documentation. So for observation, in this research, use participant observation, which the researcher participate as a teacher to obtain the necessary data. And for the documentation, in this research, documentation is needed as evidence that the researcher made observation and saw a picture of influence of the discussion method on student speaking abilities. So the last slide for Chapter 3, that is data analysis. Data analysis divided into 4. Data analysis divided into 5 sub. Number 1, data from the test in the study were automatically calculated and analyzed using Microsoft Excel 2010 software and SPSS V25 at a significant level of 0,05. So for calculate all the data from this research, I use a Microsoft Excel and then SPSS. So I'm not to calculate this with manually, but I will use SPSS and then Microsoft Excel. So for the step I analyze this data, first I will use preliminary analysis. Preliminary analysis, that is divided into 2. That is normally test and then homogeneity test. For normal test is used to determine whether the data from the experimental group and control group are normally distributed or not, like that. The significant from the normally data, that is, if the significant value is bigger than 0,05, then the data distributed is normal. But if the significant value smaller than 0,05, then the data distribution is not normal. For the homogeneity test is used to determine whether. For the homogeneity test, it used to determine whether the data is between variable x and y are homogeneous or not. So for the significant in this test, that is must be more than 0,05 for it can say that the data is homogeneous. Like the next is the researcher will calculate the pre-test and post-test score from the data that the researcher get from the pre-test and post-test, yeah. And the next is calculate the hypothesis test. The hypothesis test, the criteria from the hypothesis test is HA is accepted if T0 that T0 bigger than T table with the significance to tailored 5% smaller than 0,05, and for H0 is accepted if T0 smaller than T table with the significance to tailored 5% bigger than 0,05. So for the next is the final step is to carry out an exercise test to determine the magnitude of the influence of the discussion method on student speaking ability using the formula of exercise. So that is my present about thesis proposal from the chapter 1 until chapter 3. And thank you for the time it's given and for the opportunities given. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.